Hello everybody, and welcome back to Monster Hunter D&D. For those of you who don't know, Monster Hunter D&D is a D&D video series that covers the ongoing D&D campaign that I am in. It is, as you could have guessed, a Monster Hunter themed D&D campaign. This is episode 5 in the series, with all the other episodes here. If you don't know anything about Monster Hunter or D&D, don't worry, I will do my best to explain everything so you aren't left in the dark. So, in the last episode, we came face to face with the BBEG, or Big Bad Evil Guy, as it is called in D&D. He showed up and destroyed Astera and killed hundreds of people who were there. It took a week to find the last bodies. Our group gets called over to the big meeting table near the center of Astera. Laying on the table were the bodies of the commander and the admiral. The commander was the man in charge of Astera and second in command in the guild's campaign in the New World, with the admiral being first in command. With both of them dead, it leads to the issue of who should be in charge of Astera. Some of the higher-up hunters decide to leave Astera in the hands of the Big Three, as they tell us. Apparently, the Big Three are the three most powerful hunters in the New World. We're told that they are currently out in the ancient forest somewhere and have been for a few days. They have no idea what happened to Astera, and that they are being placed in charge over Astera. So we are asked to go find them for the guild. Right, says Farley. We will go and find them for you. Our group heads out to the ancient forest and begins to search for the hunters. We find 3 humanoid footprints and 1 that isn't humanoid. We follow them deep into the forest until we find 2 people talking to each other. Excuse me, Farley says. Sorry to interrupt, but do you know where we can find the Big Three? We're the Big Three. What's up? One of them answers. Oh, you are, but there's only 2 of you, Farley states. One of them whistles. Out of the bushes, a Rajang emerges. Rajang is another monster from Monster Hunter. It is a giant ape with a small donkey-like tail. When they get angry, their fur turns yellow and their attacks become more powerful. Because it is a monkey that punches things and becomes stronger with its hair becoming yellow, a lot of people like to compare it to the Saiyans from the hit anime Dragon Ball Z. The Rajang came out of the bushes carrying something in its arms. We managed to see that it is a Wyverian woman who is sleeping. Oh, Farley exclaims. I'm Fectious. This is Ignacio. And she's Aaron. A lot of people call us the Big Three, Fectious says. So what can we do for you all? I'm sorry to be the one to tell you this, but something happened at Astera. Someone named Ghost killed the Admiral and the Commander. Astera was damaged pretty badly, Farley says. Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Vexus replies. Yeah, Farley starts. The thing is, the guild wants you 3 to be in charge now. Could you give us a minute? Vexus says. He and Ignacio walk away for a minute and begin to have a conversation on their own. Afterwards, they come back and accept the offer from the guild. As we begin to head out, we hear a noise in the woods. A branch snaps, and from the trees walks out a Nargacuga. A Nargacuga is a flying wyvern. It looks different from the other flying wyverns, like the Astalos and the Rathalos, however. Its front wings have evolved to be more arm/leg-like, and the wing parts themselves have shrunk. It has black fur and a cat-like face. Its tail is thick, with fur at the end that looks similar to feathers, but they are razor-sharp and can shoot off and cut its prey. As it hunts, its bloodlust causes its eyes to glow red. The Nargacuga begins to approach the group with bright red eyes. We are told to roll for initiative. Now is the time that I would describe an amazing battle, but it kind of wasn't. Farley went first, then Ignacio and Fectish, and at that point, it was dead. That's really the fight. It wasn't a matter of the Nargacuga being weak, but Ignacio and Fectish being really powerful. It isn't until after the fight when Erin wakes up. Our group explains the situation to her, and we all head back to Astera. The big three thank us for bringing them to Astera and head off towards the command table. Our group decides to head to the canteen for a meal before checking out what missions are available. As we head to the crest board at the front gate of Astera, Farley freezes in his tracks. "What is it, Farley?" Isaiah asks. Farley doesn't answer. He just keeps staring at the gates of Astera. Everyone looks towards the gates to see what he is looking at. Standing at the gates is another owlin. His feathers are darker than Farley's, and he's wearing some very fancy ornate robes decorated with stylish designs. The inside of his wings have a rainbow hue to them, and one of his eyes has a scar across it, and the other one glows red. All the other hunters and researchers walk by as if they don't even notice him there. He stands there with his arms in the sleeves of his robes, staring at Farley. Farley walks up to him. "You have a lot of nerve showing up here," Farley says. "Farley," the stranger starts, and he opens his arms. "It's been a while, hasn't it?" "What do you want from me? What is so worth following me here to the New World?" Farley asks. "Can't you just be happy to see an old friend again?" the stranger replies. "Who is this, Farley?" asks Isaiah. "This is Styx. He tried to kill me before," Farley answers with a bark in his voice. "All it was a little poison. And besides, you just had to join me and we could have skipped that little problem." Styx replies. "I will never join your cult," Farley says. "Well, you made it perfectly clear what your point was. Luckily, I'm not here to ask you to join me." "And why are you here?" Farley asks. "I heard you were a hunter here. I would like to hire you and your," he looks at the rest of us, "group, if you could call yourselves that, to hunt something for me," Styx says. "Hey, what do you mean by that?" Isaiah asks. Styx looks over at Isaiah. "You come here and start insulting not only me, but Farley too? Who even are you, you bitch-ass priest-looking motherfucker? You look like one of those people who would have someone pour you wine from one of those fancy urn-looking things. You look like an owl in clown makeup. You look like..." As Isaiah is going on and on with insults, Styx just raises his arm and flicks his hand. At that moment, Isaiah finds that he's unable to speak, no matter how hard he tries. And trust me, he tried really hard. "Stop that, Styx. Let him go," Farley pleads. "I could. Or I could make it permanent. Honestly, I like him better this way," Styx remarks. "Release him now," Farley demands. "Only if you agree to hear me out," Styx says. "Fine," Farley answers. Styx waves his hand again and Isaiah gasps for air. "Now then," Styx says, "I want you all to hunt a monster for me. It's been a nuisance lately, and me and my group would greatly appreciate it out of our way." "You mean you and your cult?" Farley asked. Styx stares right at Farley's eyes. "You know, Farley, you're quite talkative for someone who is dead," he says. Farley backs up and quiets down. Styx gets a smug look on his face. "Don't worry. You'll get something out of this deal, too," Styx says. "What do you mean?" Farley asks. "It's come to my attention that you have your hands on a special egg that you can't seem to hatch," Styx answers. "How do you know about that?" Farley exclaims. "Never mind that. All you should know is I have my hands on some information that could help," he says. Farley stays quiet for a few seconds to think. "Fine. he says. 6 reaches into one of the sleeves on his robe and pulls out a scroll. Here you go. This shit has everything you need to know, he says as he hands the scroll to Farley and leaves. Farley opens the scroll and takes a look at it. It has us go to the forest and hunt an astrolose. You all should just stay behind for this one. This is my business, and I can't risk any of you getting hurt, Farley says. Our entire group immediately disagrees with him, and we all insist we go. After some back and forth between Farley and everyone else, Farley reluctantly lets us all go with him. As we leave, a researcher walks up and hands Vahalectria a book with different monsters in it. He had heard of Vahalectria's interesting wild shape abilities and thought the book would help him turn into various monsters. Once we arrive in the forest, we can see 2 different pairs of footprints. One pair is significantly bigger than the other. We decide to follow the smaller pair first to see where it takes us. It leads us through a cave system, where upon reaching one of the exits, we can hear fighting. We decide to sneak out and take a look, and we witness a Rathalos and an Astrolus cloaked in green lightning fighting each other, with the Astrolus winning. So, here's the thing. Astroloses can charge themselves up, and when they do, they are cloaked in green electricity, which means their attacks are stronger than usual, which is bad. But there was another reason why this would be cloaked in green electricity, which means it's not charged up yet, which is worse. For now, let's just say it's already charged. Now then, after the Rathalos flies away with its tail between its legs, the Astrolus notices us, and we are told to roll for initiative. The Astrolus goes last, so everyone is able to get at least 1 hit in before its turn. Now, the Astrolus doesn't run at us. It doesn't bite us. It simply flies up to the air, and a giant beam of lightning is produced from its head. You know how I said that this could be an Astrolus that isn't charged, and it's worse than an Astrolus that is? Yeah, this isn't a regular Astrolus. This is a Bolt Reaver Astrolus. So, in Monster Hunter, you have things called variants and subspecies. A subspecies is a form of a monster that has evolved from the original to adapt to a new environment, much like subspecies in real life. They usually wield different elements, statuses, or have new abilities that the original one doesn't have. For example, a Tobi-Kadachi is a monster that looks like a giant squirrel that can wield lightning attacks, or, as I like to call it, Gigantamax Pachirisu. Viper Tobi-Kadachi is a subspecies that has red fur instead of white, and instead of wielding lightning, it uses venomous fangs to paralyze its prey, and venomous spikes to apply poison to slowly kill them. Now, a variant isn't a subspecies, but a more powerful version of a monster. Example, in Azor Rathalos. Instead of having red scales, it has blue. These blue scales are thicker and heavier than its regular counterpart. That means it's harder to damage because its natural armor is tougher, but it also has to be stronger in order to take off, so it hits harder. Its fire attacks are also much more powerful as well. Now, back to the Astrolus. Like I said, a regular Astrolus is cloaked in green lightning when it is charged up. However, a Bolt Reaver Astrolus is cloaked in green lightning when it isn't charged. The lightning turns blue when it does charge up. We are fighting a Bolt Reaver Astrolus, and that thing is much more threatening than a regular Astrolus. For those of you who only know D&D terms, a regular Astrolus has a CR of 9. A Bolt Reaver has a CR of 16. We're all level 4. CR stands for Challenge Rating, for those of you who don't know. It's just a way to show DMs how challenging a monster is to fight. The Astrolus brings its lightsaber, as we call it, down on everyone, downing 2 people and severely injuring everyone else. At that moment, we decide to grab those two who were downed and run like hell back to the cave. We manage to escape and are sitting in an opening, healing our wounds and reviving the downed players. I told you all you should have just left this to me. Now you're all getting hurt, and it's my fault, Farley says. We're a team, Farley. We're not gonna let you fight alone, Elder replies. But this isn't your fight. It's mine. You all stay here. I'm going to go finish it, Farley says. We're not letting you get yourself killed on a suicide mission, Elder exclaims. And I'm not letting you guys die before me. If I'm going to die, so be it. It'll probably be better that way, Farley says. After some back and forth for a while, Farley tries to leave back to the Aroace. Elder tries to grab him. They both roll strength checks, and Elder was higher, so he manages to grab Farley and stop him from leaving. Let me go, Farley says as he struggles to break free. No, Elder replies. Farley struggles for a bit longer before we hear a noise coming from inside the cave. Thud. 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 The noise is coming from further in the cave, so not where the Aroace was. Thud. Thud. Whatever is making it, it's big. Thud. Thud. And it's getting closer. Thud. From around the bend in the cave appears him. Steve. Steve is a nickname for the monster Sergios. A Sergios is a flying wyvern with golden scales. These scales are razor sharp, and the Sergios can shoot them at its prey to cause bleeding. On top of that, Sergios also have huge, thick legs they use to deliver powerful kicks and quick charges. Steve walks right by the party. His eyes dart at the party before going back to looking in front of him. As he ignores us, he leaves the cave through the entrance, and we begin to hear the sound of fighting and roaring coming from the Aroace. Faylene volunteers to go look and see what's happening. When she gets there, she sees Steve covered in purple dust fighting the Aroace. They return to the party and tell everyone that we need to leave. They refuse to elaborate as we ask why. We backtrack through the cave to where we originally entered, and as we leave, we hear a loud roar, followed by an explosion. We watch as purple dust gets scattered around the area where the Aroace was. I don't think we should go back there, Isaiah says. We should just leave. Guess we failed. Styx might get upset, Farley says. As we begin to leave, we see Styx waiting for us. Congrats on killing it for me, he says. We all looked confused for a bit. My best guess is that it was killed in the explosion or the fight with Steve. I held up my end of the deal, Farley says. I know, replies Styx. He reaches to his sleeve in his robe and pulls out another scroll. Here you go. This should have all the information you're looking for. Farley grabs the scroll from Styx. See you again, Farley. Really soon, says Styx as he vanishes in a mist. Great, says Farley. He puts the scroll away in his bag. We head back to Astera, and seeing how all of us are injured, we decided to put off looking at the scroll for now. As we all split up to heal or do other things, Farley collapses and passes out in front of Isaiah. Farley! Isaiah says in a panic. Farley woke up half an hour later. He was laying on a table in an empty room. He slowly gets up before falling back down on the table from pain. "Don't move," Isaiah says as he enters the room. "Isaiah?" Farley asks, somewhat exasperated. "You're too injured to move right now. I was waiting for you to wake up before healing you," Isaiah says. "Oh," Farley starts. A worried look falls upon his face. You don't have to do that. I'm feeling better already." He tries to get up again before the pain forces him back down. "Ow." "Farley, you're in pain," Isaiah says, concerned. "It's fine. I deserve it," Farley says. "No, you don't, Farley. Let me help heal you," Isaiah says. "I don't have a choice, do I?" Farley asks. "No, you don't. Now take off your shirt. I need to assess your injuries," Isaiah says. Farley reluctantly removes his shirt. Underneath are scars from the lightning blast he was hit with by the Bolt Reaver Aeschylus. On top of that are other injuries that look older, like Farley hasn't tended to them. And finally, Isaiah notices Farley's ribs can be seen from under his skin. "Farley, how long have you had these injuries? Have you been eating?" he asks. Farley looks away. It's nothing. Don't worry about it," he says. "I am worried about it," Isaiah says. He begins to heal Farley, slowly but surely. "It was a few weeks ago," Farley starts. I grew up in a small place called Jumbo Village. My birth mom died after I was born. The village wanted to kill me because I was a Malfesto cross. They thought all Malfesto crosses were evil. But she stepped in. She adopted me and became my new mom. I had a new mom. And 2 new brothers. I grew up and became an investigator, and they became hunters. Then one day, he stops. "What's wrong?" Isaiah asks. "A few weeks ago, we were following a case when we were attacked by a Rathian. I couldn't save. It was my fault. I failed to save them. They died, and it was my fault," Farley says and begins to cry. Isaiah stops healing him to check on him. "Farley, hey, it's not your fault. You tried to save them, and you aren't the one that killed them," he says. "But it is. I was supposed to take care of them. I was supposed to keep them safe," Farley says. He seethes in pain as the conversation causes Farley to move. "Oh shit, stop moving," Isaiah says. He goes back to healing Farley. "When I returned to Jumbo Village, the villagers weren't happy. But hey, they finally got their excuse to get rid of me," Farley says. "Did they kick you out? Exile you?" Isaiah asks. "They..." Farley pauses. "What is it?" Isaiah asks. Farley doesn't reply. "Hey, this is a safe place. No one can get you here. And even if they could, I would kick their ass if they even tried anything," Isaiah assures Farley. Farley starts to shake. "They beat me for hours in front of my mother. They took a branding iron and branded me a monster," Farley says. He removes the bandage from his left arm. Burnt into his feathers and his flesh is the kanji for monster. "I'll never forget her face. her tears. She was helpless to save me, and I helpless to comfort her. Farley, Isaiah says quietly. Once they were done, they took my barely conscious body out to sea, where they dumped me and left me for dead. That's why Styx said I was very talkative for a dead person. If Jumbo Village found out I survived, they would hunt me down. That's why I fled to the New World, so they wouldn't find me, Farley says. Wait, I thought only hunters were allowed to come here, Isaiah asks. Farley looks down. I'm not actually a hunter. I just snuck onto the boat. The plan was to leave once I got here, but now I'm caught up in this war, and then there's Vahalictria and Captain, and they're just kids. They need someone to protect them, and now there's this whole ordeal with Styx. Farley starts. He isn't able to finish, as he gets interrupted by Isaiah giving him a hug. Isaiah, Farley says. Don't worry. I won't tell anyone. You're welcome to stay here, Isaiah says. But why? Farley asks. Because I care about you, Farley, Isaiah says. Farley can't find the right words. He expected Isaiah to be angry, not compassionate. Now, your wounds are healed, but you need to stop starving yourself and eat. Come with me. I'll cook you up something at the canteen, Isaiah says. I'm not really hungry, Farley starts before Isaiah interrupts him. And I didn't ask. From now on, I will be your chef, and you will eat what I make, and you need to build up muscle, Isaiah says, as he begins to head out of the room. All right, Isaiah, Farley says. He gets up, grabs his shirt, and follows him out. After a hefty meal, Isaiah had to clean up the dishes. Farley walks back into the barracks. Only Vahalictria was there. He was looking at the book the researchers had given him. Hey, Val, Farley says. Hello, Vahalictria replies without looking up. What you doing? Farley asks. I'm looking at the book the researchers gave me, Vahalictria replies. Check it out. He shows Farley a monster from one of the books. This one looks powerful. Farley takes a look at the stats of the monsters. They seem weak and unimpressive. Well, it does look cool, I guess, but I don't think it's very powerful, Farley says. Really? What makes you say that? Vahalictria asks. Well, the book says it's not very strong, Farley answers. How can you tell? The pictures make it look very strong, Vahalictria asks. Yeah, but the words here say otherwise. Farley points to its stats. Vahalictria looks at what Farley's pointing to and then looks back confused. Wait, those squiggles have meanings? He asks, surprised. Well, yeah, they're words. Farley pauses for a moment. Wait, Vahalictria, can you read? He asks. What's reading? Vahalictria replies. It's at this moment Farley realized Vahalictria is illiterate. Rather than tease Vahalictria, Farley felt sympathy for him and began to teach him how to read and understand the squiggles, as Vahalictria put it. They spent a few hours going through page by page. Vahalictria flips to the next page and looks surprised. Hey, Farley, Look, it's that monster from before. Dire Morales, he says. Oh, hey, I guess it is, Farley says. What does this say? Vahilectra asks. Farley looks to what he is pointing at. It says, Elder Dragon. Vahilectra is pointing at the words that say what its classification is. Farley grows silent and begins to silently panic. He starts to think of the egg he has. Vahilectra knows it's a Dire Morales egg. If he were to find out that Dire Morales is an Elder Dragon, he might try and do something to it before it even got a chance to hatch. Luckily, Farley moved the egg shortly after he found out Vahilectra's hatred towards Elder Dragons. Farley began to think, what do I do? Should I tell him the truth? What would he do if I told him? Do I lie? It would protect the egg, and maybe I could have time to figure out why he hates Elder Dragons, and maybe help him through it. Farley, is something wrong? Vahilectra asks. Farley realizes he has been staring at the page for a while. Oh, sorry, it's nothing, Farley says. What does the book say about Dire Morales? Vahilectra asks again. It says Brute Wyvern, surprisingly. Farley lies. Oh, so it's like Angie, Vahilectra says. Angie being the Anjanath Vahilectra hatched from his egg. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Farley jokes. Well, would you look at the time? It's been a few hours since we started. We should probably end the lesson here and pick up where we left off later. Farley says, trying to find a way out of this now. You're probably right. Vahilectra gets up and puts the book away. He begins to leave before turning back to Farley. Oh, Farley, he says. Yes? Farley asks. Thank you. Me and Captain, we really haven't had anyone to teach us this stuff, or even take care of us, Vahilectra says. You're welcome, Farley says with a smile on his face. Vahilectra walks out of the barracks. Farley stops smiling. He raises one of his hands in the air and slaps himself in the face. He hated lying to the kid. Thank you all for watching, and if you really enjoyed this video, please give it a like, and if you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask them in the comment section below. Thank you all for watching, and have a great day. Goodbye.